attend, but maybe she's held up. Donald Harris?
I'm here.
I guess we all are. Martha Prue? Here. Malia Seavey? Here. Wilda Riasco? Okay, she waved.
Do we have a Wilda's audio? Well, it's showing that she's green, but we don't hear her.
Okay, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, that completes roll call. We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Thank you. Next, item 2 is public participation.
Alan?
Yes.
Let's see.
We have, I believe,
Okay, yes.
2 written statements and 3 registrants
Yes.
for public participation. You have the.
Oh my goodness. I know the names. Luckily, we only have 3. The first person is Dr. Stephen Hedges for AACT Connecticut.
I am here. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you very well.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity for me to provide comments to the State Board of Education today. My name is Dr. Stephen Hegedus. I am the current president of the Connecticut chapter of the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, AACTE Connecticut. I'm also the dean of the College of Education at Southern Connecticut State University. AACTE Connecticut is an association of 14 public and private colleges and universities that provide educator preparation programs to students interested in the education profession. We promote and strongly support high quality teaching and education in our state schools and are advocates for a robust educational leadership. On behalf of AACTE Connecticut and my own institution, thank you to the Board of Ed, the Department of Education, and to those individuals with whom our organization works with frequently. As we all know, COVID continues to impact all of us, and the AACTE Connecticut member institutions collectively and individually are continuing to do their very best to ensure that our educator programs are preparing undergraduate and graduate students to become outstanding future teachers and leaders here in Connecticut. We want to express our support for 2 pieces of legislation the Board and the Department of Education are proposing to the Education Committee of the General Assembly. One proposal would modify the bilingual ed cert to help address the shortage of bilingual teachers in our state. The other proposal would make changes to the resident educator certificate and are designed to help expand the potential pool of persons interested in becoming a teacher. It would allow applicants enrolled in our Master of Arts in Teaching programs to participate in the resident educator participant program, whereas only those enrolled in alternative routes to cert at this time. I should note there was some concern among some members about removing the 3.0 minimum GPA and the potential for diluting the quality of some teachers that get placed in the field. Also, regarding EdTPA, we largely support EdTPA as a valid performance-based assessment used by teacher preparation programs in our state and across our country as one component to show that teacher candidates are prepared to teach on day one. However, we do recognize the cost barriers that EdTPA and other administrative fees present to students and support ways to alleviate some of these costs. As an organization, we want to continue working together with the Department of Ed, the board, the various educational stakeholders, such as the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, working very closely with Fran Rabinowitz, and other education organizations where appropriate. Please continue to reach out to myself, our association, on issues of mutual interest. Thank you once again for the opportunity to address the board.
Thank you. Okay, and our next,
Okay, the second person is Christina Kettle. She's a resident of Sterling, Connecticut.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to voice my concerns. My name is Christina Kettle, and I am a resident of Sterling, a small rural town located on the very eastern side of the state near the Rhode Island border. I'm reaching out to the State Board of Education for help in working with our local board. The town of Sterling does not have a high school located in town. The town had a 20-year contract with another local town. The contract was up for negotiations last year. An ad hoc committee was formed, research started, and then COVID hit, stalling the entire process. Many parents in the community spoke requesting the board to investigate other high school options. A new ad hoc committee consisting of 2 board members was formed, and they presented their findings and recommendations to continue negotiations with the current high school. One of the reasons they denied adding other high school options was the expense of a minimum of 32 special needs students in our community. I don't feel the quality of education or right to choice should affect the remaining students from their right to choose a school that supports their current and future educational needs. I'm asking for your help with our Board of Education so we can work together to provide our students with the opportunity to attend a school of their choice, which lines up with their current and future goals, versus just settling for a designated school, which was chosen due to the number of special needs students in our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker.
All right, the third speaker is a well-known speaker. We should have Sophia Chin.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Hi, my Board of Ed friends. It's so nice to see you guys again. I wanted to thank you guys for inviting me back to share a little bit. Millen told me to say hi for him. He has classes this afternoon, but hopefully we'll be making another appearance in the April meeting. I'm currently doing my college classes at home in Connecticut, although I hope to make it down to DC in the fall. This isn't stopping me from continuing my education work that I started with this very group. I wanted to share with you some of the work I've been up to and potentially share some resources with you all in terms of student representation and student voice. I've been doing work with the organization called Student Voice, which is a national student-led org dedicated to enhancing student engagement in education. NASB often partners with them for roundtables and student panels, so they're definitely pretty legit. I've been working with them on their student training series where they partner students around the nation to help solve problems they're facing with their local board specifically, and also to learn more about how Board of Ed spend their money and allocate them towards different resources. They have an excellent guide on how to speak to your Board of Ed and how to testify on a cause you're passionate about, and I'll be sure to send that link over to Aldith later so she can get that to you guys. I've also accepted a position on the Board of Directors of America's Promise Alliance, where I'm currently involved in grant projects to give companies funding for providing students with mentorship and say in making equitable job opportunities, as well as mini grants for students to apply for in order to start a youth project related to student voice and raising awareness on diversity, equity, and inclusion in their school districts. If you have any students or school districts in mind to be highlighted for these grants, definitely let me know. I'd love to spread this project through Connecticut as well. Lastly, I just wanted to plug something exciting of my own. I published my first piece, and the topic is on how I know our favorite Secretary of Education and my call to action for him in office. I hope you all check it out and know that all the work and passion I have for education policy is because of this group right here. I'll also send that link to you guys as well after the meeting. And thanks so much for reaching out, you guys. And hopefully Millen and I will show up to next month's meeting as well.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, that concludes public participation.
Okay. And May I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel matter?
So moved. Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
So we're
Okay,
do we need a roll call for that?
no, just, please make sure that everyone that, from the virtual people, make sure that you completely log out of this meeting and log in using your, and log in using your Teams link that was sent to you for the executive session. Okay,
And then we move over there, right?
well, physically, you'll go into conference room E.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
I didn't recognize yet.
Was I the first one here?
I think you were.
All right, thank
Let's
you,
say
Karen.
you were, let's say you were, okay? It's gonna
All right,
make
thank
you feel
you.
good.
Hey, Bonnie.
Alan, was Bonnie Burr in executive session?
No.
No.
Okay, thank you.
So who is it who's trying to get in at this point? Oh.
They can see us, they just can't hear us.
Maybe they're not.
Oh, here we are.
We can
Here we are. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, may I have a motion to exit the executive session?
So moved?
That was Karen and, Malia Seavey.
Oh, okay.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Now I told to ask the board's permission to take the agenda out of order so that we can move to consider agenda item 6C, appointments of acting commissioners. Is there any objection?
No.
Okay. I have a motion on 6B to appoint the acting commissioner.
So
I
moved.
recommend the appointment.
Second.
Any discussion?
I think I do want to discuss that we're selecting the appropriate person to be the acting commissioner. I just want the minutes to respect that.
Yes, I second your observation. I think we have no doubt that Charlene is the right person for this moment.
Thank you. I would just like somebody to say her name
Yeah.
for the record.
We're recommending Charlene Russell
Okay.
as acting commissioner.
So may I have I guess we've got a motion. We don't need a roll call, do we?
No.
Well, we, to make it, formally, we should do a roll call.
Okay. Then Chairman, Al, would you please call the roll?
Okay. Chair Taylor,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lopez,
Absolutely, aye.
Erin Benham,
Absolutely.
Bonnie Burke,
Aye.
Eric Clement,
Yes.
Karen DeVos Walton.
Yes.
Elwood Exley,
Aye.
Donald Harris,
Aye.
Martha Prue. Aye. Awilda Riesco,
Yes.
Malia Stevie,
Yes.
okay, thank you. That completes the vote, and we, item 6D has passed unanimously.
Bravo.
Thank you. Charlene, do you want to come up to the, waiting.
The hot seat.
I will, and thank you very much. I truly appreciate the opportunity to serve in this manner. I think Chair Taylor said it best. We're at the intersection of health and education, critically important, and the need to make sure we've got robust family and community engagement and all the things that are so necessary now. And I thank you for your vote of confidence in leading the work, and certainly for the governor's appointment in doing this work, and also with working with all of you in order to make sure that we accelerate learning for all our kids and not waste this time that we have. It is our moment to do all we can for all our kids. So thank you very much.
Thank you. May I have a motion on the minutes?
So move.
Second.
Any discussions or corrections? I noted a couple of typos that I'll just give to Al. And I guess I had one question. The reopening plans and support paragraph states that,
What page number?
I'm sorry, on page 5 of 7. And I'm just wondering, it's not a correction to the notes, but there's a share with the board that over 80% of districts are currently providing some sort of in-school learning. I wonder if we know what percentage of students that is. We have some very large districts and many very small districts, but is Disney on?
Hold on.
This is,
Can you repeat it so that, Commissioner, here's the question?
Yes, the question on the discussion on,
Something about the remote country.
I don't know if he,
I don't know.
I don't know if he shared that, so that's probably why it wouldn't be in the minutes. I think he just shared
he
how many
shared the,
districts were.
Right.
he shared the models, he shared the models for how many districts we can get information on students. And Ajit is gonna do a presentation later on learning models, and we can talk about number of students.
Okay, okay,
Ajit?
good. Any other? I'll just give my typos directly to Al. I don't think we need to discuss those, so. On approval of minutes, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. No report of commissioner incidents here. Have a motion on item 6A.
So,
Our second,
Second?
Ajit.
she's done.
There you are. I'll get out of the habit of looking around the table.
Good afternoon, Chairman Taylor, Vice Chair Lopez, and Commissioner Russell Tucker. Congratulations. So the condition of education is the annual report that we present to the board sometime this month or the prior month. And this is for the prior school year, the 1920 school year. And you all have the publication in front of you, and it's also available online. So I'm just going to do a few highlights from the report itself, and then I'll take questions. Last year, obviously, and even this year, are unusual years and somewhat disrupted years for public school education. So last year, for the 1920 school year, pursuant to flexibility offered by the Federal Department of Education, we did not administer our state assessments, nor did we implement our school and district accountability model. As such, several of the indicators that we normally would have had around achievement, academic achievement, academic growth, etc., are not available this year. Furthermore, some of our indicators were impacted by the switch to sudden full-time remote learning in mid-March. As an example, chronic absenteeism as an indicator. Normally we would do it based on the full school year, but for last year, we had to calculate it based on a shortened school year schedule. So instead of 180 school days, many of the students had about 120 in-person school days. It's different for the current year, the 2021 school year, but for the prior school year, which is what this condition of education is about, it didn't. We only had 120 odd school days for students. So that's one other way in which an indicator like chronic absence was impacted. Similarly, school discipline also was impacted because in-person schooling pretty much ended in mid-March. So we didn't have any in-person schooling after that. So we have included the 2019-20 data where available for all these indicators. What we suggest is to not look at trend necessarily, because you will see a slight increase in chronic absence or a slight decline. But what is more appropriate to look at is disproportionality. So that's just a caution with several of the indicators. So I'll just do a brief overview of, and I'm really going from the executive summary of the document. So in case you're looking to follow what I'm saying, I'm really just working from that executive summary. So, what we see is our student enrollment continues to decline about 0.5%, and it did so for the 1920 school year as well. But that enrollment continues to become more diverse, which is about 49% of our students in the 1920 school year were non-white, and about 43%, over 43%, were students who were eligible for free or reduced price meals. And that's our highest levels as well. And 16% of our students are with disabilities, and over 8% are English learners, and that continues to as well. Our educator workforce continues to also diversify, but not as fast as our student population. So in 1920 school year, about 9.6% of our educator workforce was non-white. I already indicated chronic absence and our suspension expulsion information. While the rates may be what they are for the 1920 school year because of the shortened in-person school instruction, we did see disproportionalities in those indicators. Students of color, students with higher needs showing higher rates of chronic absenteeism and higher suspension and expulsion rates. You do know that and we did present this, I think, last board meeting, we did institute the discipline tiers pursuant to the Alicia B. legal settlement. We did introduce discipline tiering of districts to provide interventions and supports. For that identification, we used the 18-19 data because that was the full group data. Lastly, our 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate continues to improve. We're talking here about the cohort of 2019, meaning that students who should have graduated on time by the end of August in 2019. And two of our high-need groups, our English learners and students with disabilities, reflected their highest 4-year graduation rates. They're not great, they're not in the 90% or anything, but for those two groups, it was the highest on-time graduation rate that we've seen. So that continues to be encouraging. Our college entrance rates continue to be over 70%, and our college graduation rates, 6-year college graduation rates, were over 50%. And here we're looking at the graduating class of 2014 because we have to look 6 years forward for those groups. So those continue to be over 50%. So again, there are many indicators that we normally would look at, like our accountability indicators, our academic achievement and growth. Those are unfortunately not available for the prior year. Obviously, a lot of things are in motion for this year, and I'll speak to that when we get to the agency update. But this kind of wraps up, at least at a high level, the condition of education for last year. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Clearly, there are things that we did in March through June around devices, connectivity, and then subsequent to that into this year that we didn't really reference in this report. We left the report more about the standard data elements that we normally do. But I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions?
I do. Woody has a question.
Oh, Woody?
That's an outstanding report. There's so much good information in here. And when I was looking at the declining enrollment year after year, I was wondering, are there any long-term implications that we should be considering when we look at that? Like, for instance, I have the impression that some of the high schools are very small. And is there anything we should be thinking about with regard to that?
Good question. I think the system continues to calibrate as there is a steady decline. So when there's a sort of a predictable steady decline, the system at the local level and the regional level continues to calibrate. Districts reorganize their schools, consolidate schools, change grades. So we see those types of practices, and we have seen that continually through this past several years when we've had a decline. But I think the bigger challenge, Mr. Exley, is going to be the year that we're in, because and I presented the current year's enrollment a few board meetings ago, where we have had a huge drop in kindergarten and pre-K enrollment for the current year. And that, I think, is going to generate a kind of bubble, if you will. Next year, we'll have to see how that plays out. And that's something I think we'll have to really watch for in terms of what happens to those pre-K students who didn't attend pre-K this year. Are they going to come to kindergarten? And there were about 4,000 students who didn't start kindergarten, who should have started kindergarten, but who didn't. Are they going to start? Are we going to have a massive kindergarten class this coming year? So I think that's going to be more of my concern. I think or things that we're going to look for. The annual decline, I think the system continues to calibrate as it does. And you're right, there are some smaller high schools around the state, but like I said, the districts are continue to consolidate schools and change grade ranges to adjust to the new realities.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Awilda.
Nice report, Ajit. I really appreciate it. I continue to kind of express the same that I've said before, is that our students of color, the higher suspension for our males. Okay, that is something that we keep hearing over and over and over again. And again, and so when I look at higher education, they're the ones that need a lot of support when we get them here in higher institutions like in universities. So my question is, how can we better, if part of the interventions and the resources, how can we better be more proactive in helping maybe the parents, the families, or what can we do, because it keeps coming up, the higher suspension for students of color, and I'd like to see that. I'd like to hear someday that no more higher suspensions for our students of color, especially our boys.
I'll just say a brief data point, and then I'll defer to Commissioner Russell Tucker and others who might be on the call. While the rates are disproportionately higher, that's true. The only point I'll make is that even for students of color and even for our other student groups, like free or reduced students from low socioeconomic backgrounds or English learners or students with disabilities, we do see some of these rates declining. They're still disproportionately higher than white students, but those rates continue to decline, and I would say that is due to the efforts of the staff in that student supports division and in our school turnaround office, who work closely with individual districts and sometimes schools to address these issues. And folks in my office, in the data office, also partner with them. For example, in the pre-K world, and we've discussed this in the pre-K through 2 world, there's legislation that actually prohibits out-of-school suspensions unless it's sexual in nature or endangers others. There is a particular, it's a very narrow provision under which out-of-school suspensions are assessed on students. So in those cases, staff in my office and in the turnaround and student supports offices actually get down to individual student level follow-ups with the districts to say, hey, we see this student is coded as X, getting an out-of-school suspension, what's going on? So I think from the data side, we obviously publish the data, but we also support our student supports and school turnaround office, which is really targeted follow-up, because that's what I think helps to inform how action and adult behavior needs to change. But I'll now defer to Charlene and others on the call.
Thank you, Ajit.
And thank you, Ajit, and thank you, Amelia, for asking the question. If you recall, last month, we did a presentation on school discipline, and we have the report. And that report has delineated the efforts that's going on that Ajit just talked about across the board. But we also have external to us, the Connecticut School Discipline Collaborative. We're actually meeting pretty soon, and we should send an invite to the board. I know we have a few board members who participate in that. But it's external partners, and we literally are working on this. I know John is on the call here as well, and he's leading that work. So we can unpack exactly the questions you're asking, and what are those strategies that we need to really be looking at, and how do we work with districts, in some cases on an individual level, to talk about what is it that we need to do in that space. So your questions are really appropriate, and we are working in that space, and would love to get your input as well as we continue that work together. John, are you on as well?
Karen?
I think Ajit, when you said it's the change in adult behaviors, and I think that's key. I think that is the biggest change we've seen over the years. I mean, kids are kids. They haven't really changed all that much. But working with our adults and bringing that out in the light about what's going on in certain schools or districts, I think has helped a great deal. And I think, the work will continue, and we'll see that work come through.
That's correct.
And I can just add, thank you, Commissioner Russell Tucker. One of the things that we continue to do is this isn't a siloed approach to school discipline. This is a systems-based approach to all things that are supporting students. So it's really all of the wraparound services. It begins certainly with the data, but through our Office of Special Education, we're addressing issues related to IDEA, disproportionate suspensions and expulsions and discipline for students with disabilities. We are working in the social emotional learning space. We're about to provide a statewide needs assessment opportunity for them so that they can do a universal screening for all of their students about what needs there are. And then there's a supplemental screening in that to find out to drill down on some of the responses to that screening to sort of look at what the particular needs are. We're also doing a landscape scan, which is an entire survey of all districts about what they are doing around social emotional learning. There's an entire body of work around, school climate and restorative practices. So we are in attendance as well, right? So students who are not engaged, to make sure that we're connecting in attendance. And so all of this is working together to say that we understand that disproportionality is the direction that we need to drill down on this. And to Commissioner Russell Tucker's point, the School Discipline Collaborative is a fantastic resource to us. Many of you know there are education attorneys on there, there are advocates, there are legislators, there are everyone who's interested in this. We are having some very specific discussions on how to approach the topic so that we can have the outcome that we're all looking for. So thank you for the question. It's a great question.
Other questions?
I just want to thank Ajit for this report. As we embark in the strategic planning process, I think looking at the state of Connecticut is sort of the starting point, the baseline for the next 5 years. What does it mean to have declining demographics? What does it mean to have more students of color? What does it mean to deal with the things that we're looking at that need to be improved? So I just want to thank you for putting together this report and for sharing it with us.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lopez. Credit to the whole performance team, because a report like the condition of ed really touches a lot of people in our office, from the folks who collect the data, administer the assessments, analyze the data, and then pull this report together. It's really all hands on deck for this particular report.
Thank you. I'd like to make one comment about a data point that was in the executive summary about the college entrance rate. A big topic among manufacturers and the people who are involved in the workforce development side is that there's a concern that high schools and the counselors are incentivized to send everybody to college. And then multiple pathways and career readiness are so important, but then sometimes we still have some points that are sticky. But I was talking to Ajit about this point. He did explain to me that programs like the non-tech advanced manufacturing program are included in this number because they're credit bearing. So I was, happy to hear that, and I'll report that back when those, those questions and concerns come out. And we'll be on the lookout to help smooth those so that all of our students can end up with the best place for that.
Other questions?
May I ask another question?
Of course.
This is Woody. I noticed that only half the students had one arts course. Am I the only one person who's troubled that only half the students took an art course?
That metric is from our accountability system, where we're looking at the percentage of students in a given year taking an arts course. So it doesn't surprise me. Our expectation is at least 60%, because in a student's high school experience, there might be a year when they don't take an arts course because they've taken it in the prior year, or they're going to take it in a subsequent year. So you don't, it's not 100% expectation in every year. And because this is an annual metric, it looks like the other half is not taking an arts course, but they might have taken it in the prior year, or they're going to take it in a future year.
Well, we always hear that the arts are being cut back. They're the first to be cut. I thought that indicated that was a fact.
Actually, that indicator, and I've met with the arts administrators several times, and this indicator actually gives a foothold to the importance of the arts every year, because it expects that at least a certain percentage of students will be participating in some arts programming every year. So yeah, it's not 100% every year, but it does ensure that a student is exposed to the arts through their high school experience. And by having it as an indicator, it keeps the arts, as part of the big sort of formal accountability system for a school or district.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I have one. On page 12 on the
Increase in percentage of non-white educators, which is fairly slow over the 5 years. I'm wondering if we know what the new teachers' diversity is, rather than as a part of the total teaching staff.
We do. I don't have it handy, Chairman Taylor, but I will follow up through with a follow-up. I know we've looked at it separately at other times. I know that the new entering core is more diverse than the existing core, which is partly why you're seeing the increases to the overall educator workforce, but I don't have the percentage handy, but we will get back to you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I have another question, if you don't mind. I don't want to monopolize, but I was looking at the college enrollment and college completion on pages 20 and 21, and I saw that the young men are doing much worse than the young women in enrolling in college and completing college. And I'm just wondering if we're looking at that and if there's anything to be done about that.
The government should be looking at that, not the department. I think that trend is in existence for the last 20 years or more. That's not a new trend. That's true for many, many years. And I think, that's part of the college, as Dr. Gates said, that's part of the college is looking at how to help young men stay and complete. So.
Yes, this is Jane Gates here. Thank you for that question. We are very much looking at the proportionality of persons who are not successful and move forward, the attrition rate. So what we are putting in place are guided pathways from the onboarding to completion, which requires that we spend much more time mentoring those students. We have to identify where the needs are. This is also part of our equity focus, not the equality, the difference between equality and equity there. So the equity focus, we're saying, we identify those students, for those students who are less prepared, then we need to add additional support. And we haven't done that very well in the past, but under the equity focus, that's exactly what we're doing to ensure that every student who enroll has as successful a chance of completion as every other student. And that requires that we treat these students differently and that we add supplemental support. And that's what equity does. We want to make sure they are equally as successful in completing those degrees. We also need to ensure that they have mentors, more mentors. We know, yeah. So that's from their ethnic or racial groups, because that matters. And that's a greater focus on partnerships in our communities, as well as in our institutions, where we are focusing on increasing diversity of our faculty members as well.
Thank you.
Those have all been shown to work.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
I just want to pick up on the
the college enrollment piece, and particular question for you, Ajit, in terms of the demographics that are provided here, it's segregated by male, female. Do you have it by race, ethnicity also?
Yes, we have these data by race ethnicity as well. And we've actually published the NSC, the National Student Clearinghouse demographic report, which we received from the NSC, which includes all those other breakouts as well, including race, ethnicity, special education, EL, etc. Those are also published or available in that report.
Is it possible to have future iterations of this include that breakout of race, ethnicity?
Sure.
Similar to the completions one on the next page? Because
yep.
So, of course, there is the role of higher education in this, but in terms of the enrollment, I just want to go back to how Awilda led us off, right? That we have issue around disproportionate suspensions of our male students of color, right? And yet we're also seeing a lack of enrollment in males going forward. These are all things that are going to relate to each other. To the 5-year strategic plan piece, these are all important pieces of information for us to be looking at, as I know you're doing within the department.
Absolutely. And if there are, we do this report annually, but if there's like that particular point, we can go back and generate additional data or additional analyses that can inform the strategic planning process as well. So we can absolutely do that.
Ajit, can you also add on the free and reduced to that?
Yes, absolutely. And I believe we did, we do several of these reports. I believe we did another one on post-secondary, solely focused on post-secondary, not the P20 win, but we can absolutely highlight college or post-secondary enrollment and post-secondary completion rates by all the additional subgroups as well. And I think I'll just add one other point is that on the K-12 side and the high school side, we just need to continue to position our students in such a way that they enter post-secondary with a leg up. And we'll talk about that in a bit, but and that could also help address some of these gaps that we're seeing. And there's a lot of work happening on that front, which I will speak to in a bit.
Other questions? Ajit, in the chart on page 12 on teacher diversity, I'm wondering if this is the percentage of the overall teaching body, right? Is the percentage of new teachers, or are the new teachers more diverse than the overall, and by how much?
And yes, that's the one. I don't have the number handy, but we will get it and recirculate or circulate it through Aldith to the board.
Okay.
We have looked at it. I remember looking at it within the last 6 months for some other requests, but I don't have the number handy. But that's another enhancement that we can make to this report itself, so that the next time I come to you, Chairman Taylor, you don't have to ask me that question. I can make sure it's in the report.
I think it belongs in the report going forward. Any other questions, comments? We have the motion on the table.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Looks like that takes us to another number 6, report of the chair. There is none. Financial matters.
So Kathy, our CFO, Kathy Dempsey, should be on the line to give us an update about our budget.
She's there. But Kathy, we can't hear you yet.
Yeah, I think she's having broadband issues.
Yes,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, and now I'm muted. The organizer unmuted me.
You have all the power.
They didn't want me to talk. No. Good afternoon, members. I hope everybody is well. So a couple of weeks ago, I was going to say years ago, it feels that way, but a couple of weeks ago, the governor did announce his proposed biennial budget for fiscal 22 and fiscal 23. The department's budget remains essentially relatively flat over the biennium. Our current services for this year is $3.052 billion, and we see an increase of about $7 million in fiscal 22, and then about $13 million in fiscal 23. So probably the major takeaways from our budget at this point are the major education funding formulas have been level funded to the current fiscal year amount. And so I'm sure that all of you have heard quite a bit about the education cost sharing grant being level funded. But it isn't just the education cost sharing grant, it's also our special ed excess cost, adult ed, any of the major formula grants that we provide. There was an increase of funding in our budget for charter schools. It moved the charter school per pupil amount from the current $11,250 per pupil to $11,525. That amount is equal to the foundation level in the ECS formula. I'm trying to think. They have another important item was they have delayed the separation of the Connecticut technical schools from the department until fiscal 2024. We had been planning, and in statute, the plan had been for fiscal 2023, so it has been delayed an additional year. As I think I said when we talked several months ago at the time of our budget development, this is kind of step 2 in the process. So the department, Charlene, and congratulations, Acting Commissioner Russell Tucker, will be testifying before the Appropriations Committee next week on our budget. And this morning we testified before the Education Committee on some of the proposals, including the agency's legislative proposals. And so this is the next part of the process where we work with the administration and the legislature on what the funding priorities will end up being when the final budget is decided. So we're in the middle of the next step, and as we move forward, I will share any important potential changes. But right now, we are pretty much level funded over the biennium, which in some respects I'm relieved over, because with the pandemic and the anticipated financial conditions of both the state and local levels, I think it's not a bad place to be. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions? I don't see anybody. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay.
Have a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Nothing. Okay, item 9, Charlene.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. So this is a point in our meeting where we provide you with some updates, agency updates, and I know we have a PowerPoint deck and a few people lined up. To share with you, we want to update you on the board's 5-year comprehensive plan. We also have some further performance updates, talking about assessment, AP course, the learning models, and I know how important it is for you to hear student voice. So also to share with you information from a thought exchange that we conducted, a little bit of update on our ESSER II funding, and finally some upcoming opportunities and shout outs that I want to make sure we include so you know what the department is doing. So with that, I'll get started with our 5-year comprehensive plan, and Keith Norton, who is leading that effort, will provide you a brief update.
Thank you, Shirley. Good afternoon, Chair Taylor, Vice Chair Lopez, members of the Board of Education, and importantly today, Commissioner Russell Tucker. So that's a thrilling day for all of us. I'm here today to go over Connecticut State Board of Education 5-year plan with you. It won't take very long because I know I have colleagues waiting behind me queued up. The agency is contracted with the Connecticut Center for School Change to assist the board in developing the next State Board of Education 5-year plan. Dr. Richard Lemons, the founder, has conducted extensive interviews with the senior leadership of the agency in preparation for this work and has been presented with the current plan and is reviewing it. Next slide. So the next steps for this year, 2021. Currently, a State Board of Education retreat is being scheduled for the week of March 22nd. Aldith will be coordinating with the board members to determine which date works best for everyone. An email on that is forthcoming. Beginning in April, the CCSC will engage stakeholders, including parents, educators, administrators, students, and community members in focus groups. They'll also conduct surveys of a wider variety of stakeholders to gain input and ideas for board consideration. Another state board retreat will be held in person, hopefully, in August, to present the information collected, review findings, and identify long-range goals and priorities to serve as a basis for a draft plan. Next slide. 2022. The draft plan that is a result of that, which I just mentioned, will be presented to the State Board of Ed in January 2022 for feedback, which will be incorporated into the document. By March, there will be a public comment period, giving all interested parties the opportunity to review the agreed upon draft, which will be summarized for consideration by board members. Finally, the final plan will be presented to the board for adoption at the June 2022 meeting in accordance with state statute. And that is our basic outline as quickly as I could run through it. I look forward to working with you all on this, and it's a very exciting time for me, as well as the Connecticut Center for School Change.
Thank you, Keith. I know, for example, that I believe they've been reaching out to board members to schedule some time, Dr. Lemons, to individually speak with you as well. Are there any questions on the board planning process?
What is the plan for the retreat? A one-day retreat? And hopefully it's going to be scheduled soon.
Well, actually, like Keith said, there is an email that will be forthcoming from me. Right now, we're looking at the week of March 22nd. So in the email, based on availability of Dr. Lemon, we'll give you the option of dates that we have. And so we'll ask the board to pretty much vote on it and see how it comes out.
All right.
And we're looking at about a half-a-day retreat, roughly 4 hours.
Okay. No.
And actually, if you don't mind, if I may also add that there are still board members that are outstanding and signing up for their interview conversation. So that would also be helpful because they're looking to complete those before the retreat.
Thank you, the next update for the board is on accountability and assessment. Ajit?
Thank you, Charlene. I updated you, I think, at the last meeting about how Connecticut was administering its assessment, but seeking flexibility from the U.S. Department of Education. Shortly thereafter, the U.S. Department of Education came out with additional communication, basically offering a full accountability waiver for states through a template. Their prior approach was a little convoluted, but they've promised to simplify it and give us a full accountability waiver through a template. And what that means is we will not have to do school identification, and there will be no expectation to report the accountability data for the 2021 school year. So that's good news. It simplifies and clarifies what the waiver is. At the same time, while they waived accountability, they did unequivocally say that states are expected to administer their state summative assessments this year. And they said that there will be no blanket waiver of state assessments. So Connecticut is obviously well positioned and was planning to do this anyway. And we're moving forward to try to do this to the best of our ability in partnership with our districts. The U.S. Department of Ed did point to some flexibilities that states could consider. They indicated perhaps state could consider administering a shorter test, but Connecticut, for its ELA assessment, English Language Arts assessments in 3 through 8, is already administering a shorter test than in other states. So we are already doing that. They encourage states to consider remote testing if feasible, and that's something we have already made inroads into. We have a robust remote proctoring tool that's being deployed that districts are using with their sort of interim assessments now, with the interim assessments that the state provides, and they will get sufficient practice to do that when we get to the summative, the academic assessments later in this school year, sometime in April and May. So that is something that the feds mentioned. It's something that Connecticut's already doing. The third thing that they mentioned was to extend testing windows, sort of give more time within which schools need to complete their testing. And that's another area where we're absolutely doing that as well. For ELA mathematics and science assessments, those windows run for 10 weeks, from late March to early June. Our Lost Links assessments, which is currently underway, we've actually doubled the window for that. It usually goes from early January to early March, but we've extended that window to late April. So we've nearly added 2 more months to the calendar. And there are flexibilities even with the Connecticut SAT school day assessment that we administer, and that is also offering additional opportunities for students. The U.S. Department of Education did clarify in their communication that in addition to expecting that the assessment results that we administer will be reported publicly, they also wanted states to report chronic absenteeism publicly. And of course, as you all know, Connecticut has been reporting chronic absenteeism. And in fact, in the year that we're in now, Connecticut is a leader in collecting attendance data and reporting that publicly. Every month we update that data. So the things that they suggested and the things that they're asking us to do are things that we are already doing. So we were pleased that we were proactive in those stances, if you will. The last piece is the nature of the assessment reporting itself this year. We know that there are students who are fully remote still, and they may not be able to come in to take the test in person. We have a remote testing platform. Districts are going to make their best effort to test students, but it's possible that we don't get the kinds of participation we did in prior years. So we really have to think through and be very careful about how we report these results so that valid inferences are made from those results by us for interventions and support decisions, but by also the general public and the media. So we're in the midst of conversations with national experts on this. A lot of national experts are weighing in on this, providing suggestions on how to account for situations where the students who test this year, because not everybody is testing, may not be entirely representative of the overall student body. We have to really be careful about how we look at the data and how we report it, but we've got the best minds working on it, talking to a lot of national experts, and we will put out results and recommend interpretations that are valid and defensible. That is a commitment from us to the school and district community, who are anxious about how these results will be reported. So I just want folks to know that we're absolutely committed to making sure that the results we report are defensible. So that's the assessment accountability most recent update from the U.S. Department of Education.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? I've got one, just because I can't quite imagine what it might be. What is a remote proctoring tool? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a good question. With our tests, except for the SAT and our alternate assessments for those significantly cognitively disabled students, our other assessments, our Smarter Balanced assessments, our NGSS assessments, the science assessments, those are all, and even our lost links assessments, those are all computer delivered. So, the experience for the student is still a computer delivered, computer administered assessment, whether they're taking it in person or whether they're taking it at home. What the remote proctoring allows you to do is to gain some visibility into the student's test taking experience. As they're taking the test, you have a video view, and we all know that in live instruction, that's already happening, right? Where students and teachers are doing remote instruction and that type of thing is happening. But in a remote proctoring tool or platform, at least the one we're administering for our ELA math and science assessments, the video feed is actually built into the test delivery system. So it's kind of a seamless experience. Plus, when you're administering the test in an in-person setting, you can walk around and you can look at what kids are doing, students are doing, what question they're on, etc. How are they moving through the assessment? Those types of tools and features are built into this remote proctoring platform, so that when a teacher is administering the assessment remotely to 5 or 6 or 10 students, that's kind of the range that we say you should administer, by the way, not more than 10. It's kind of it gets targeted to the proctor. So as long as that is happening, it gives visibility for the proctor into the experience, the testing experience of the student. It's not the same as an in-person administration, obviously, but it tries to replicate some of those features so that you can do it. You can get a valid measure, if you will, from a remote administration. Doing this upfront remote proctoring work is essential because we want to make every effort during the administration to get a valid assessment. Because if you just give a test with absolutely no controls, it's fraught with complications in terms of the results you receive. But if you have a proctor and a more tightly controlled administration, you stand a much greater chance of getting a more valid result. Now, I'll say one thing. This is new territory for all of us, for the country as a whole, for assessment as a whole. So we're not walking in with a naive view that this is going to all work perfectly. But we are taking all the steps possible and doing all the training and preparation to ensure that our excuse me, I'm picking up some background noise. I think it's from the room.
No, I think there's something going on outside. It's a little construction work. You're just hearing the beat coming through the window.
Yeah, it's pretty loud on this side of it, of this side of the meeting. But anyway, as long as you can hear me, that's good. So as long as we do this upfront work, you stand a better chance of getting valid measures. And our districts have been super about it and going through the training, using the tools we provide, practicing it with the interim assessments we provide them. And again, our performance team is doing an incredible job supporting districts. we're already version of remote administration with our last links assessment. And the general feedback is that it's more time intensive because you really have to pay attention to the student and the experience to get that valid measure. So we're doing all the upfront work and hopeful where this will lead. And again, much of the academic testing happens in May. So our hope is that the remote administration is really the exception and not the norm by that time, by some time.
Amen.
So thanks, Ajit. I'm sensitive of our time. So if you can move on to the update on the performance in advanced coursework and the learning model.
Sure, thank you. I'll be brief. I know we're almost out of time or running out of time. So we talked about this with the college entrance, the post-secondary entrance and persistence metrics. We've been doing a lot of work in the state over the years to prepare students by having them take what I'll call dual credit courses. Courses that if they take with us, that will give them some credibility in the post-secondary world. And that might be an AP course that translates to college credit, an international baccalaureate course that might translate to college credit, or a more direct dual enrollment course, which a high school might offer in partnership with a post-secondary institution. You might be familiar with UConn's early college experience, or many of our schools also have partnerships with the state universities, the 4 state universities, and our community colleges for offering dual enrollment courses. But more recently, what we were recognized for was by the College Board that among the graduating class of 2020, Connecticut had the highest percentage among all states for the percentage of graduates who scored a 3 or better on at least one AP exam. So about 34.5% of our students met that threshold. So that is definitely noteworthy. Increasingly noteworthy also is the fact that we saw increases for that graduating class for students of color, Black students, Hispanic students, and those from low-income families. And I don't believe these things happen by accident. These take intention, action, and there are a few that are listed on that slide, such as adding these to our accountability system, really sending a message to districts that these are important. Doing fee subsidies for the AP exam. We actually pay the full freight for a student from a low-income family. The College Board pays a little bit, and we pay the rest, such that a student from a low-income family, an AP exam is no cost to them. We also send out personalized letters to students, and we've spoken about that in prior meetings as well, that go from the commissioner to students who demonstrate potential, and we're continuing that practice as well. Future enhancements are that we will be rewarding not just participation in dual enrollment courses, but also completion of those courses in our accountability system. And that's a huge thing because we don't want to send the message that it's just AP or it's just IB. That they're both AP and IB are important, but as important are our partnerships with our post-secondary institutions. So we're looking forward to that. We're also expanding our criteria for those commissioner personalized letters. And this year we expect to send letters to 37,000 10th and 11th graders, and we'll be able to continue doing that in future years. Next slide, please. So switching to learning model data, and we talked about this briefly. We collect data from districts on a weekly basis on what is the learning model for that week for each grade. And then we sort of aggregate that to say, what is the predominant learning model for a district? And for the week of February 22nd through the 26th, last week, 57.9% of our districts were in a predominantly fully in-person learning model. And that's the highest we have ever reached this school year. And if you look at the chart below, you'll see the trend. And that really starts from September 14th or so, all the way up to this February 22nd. So really from the start of the year, and you'll see that, when we started, several districts kind of held back. They started in the hybrid, maybe started remote. And then come October, we kind of peaked at the mid sort of 54, 55%. But then with Thanksgiving and then the holidays and some cases, we kind of dipped. But now after the holidays, after Martin Luther King Day, we've started to increase such that we're at 57.9% in person. And then another 36.5% are predominantly offering a hybrid format. So what that means is almost 95% of our districts are offering some in-person opportunity for our students. And that's huge. And I can tell you in talking with other states around the country that we are definitely a leader in this area, and kudos to Deputy Commissioner Desi Nesmith and then Deputy Commissioner Charlene Russell-Tucker for all the work. I mean, they did. It was all hands on deck, and others from School Turnaround Office, Irene and Lisa and others who've been really on our districts to do this amazing work, and that's shown up in the results here. Chairman Taylor, you asked previously about the students who are remote. This talks about what the district is offering. So we do track that on a monthly basis. And what I can say is that for what we're finding is that, as schools and districts change, maybe they have a case, they go remote for a week and then they come back and so on. What we're finding is that more and more students are falling into sort of a hybrid bucket, if you will. About 14.5% of our students, as of the end of January, were fully remote from the start, which means that the remaining 85% had come in for at least a day the school year. Obviously, more of them had come in a hybrid format. There are some who have been about 20%, 20 to a little over 20% of our students have been mostly or fully in person all year. And about 41% have been in a hybrid format. So, and that data is on the website where we publish this data as well. So it's really promising that when we have more schools open, more of our students seem to avail of that in-person experience. And especially when two of our largest districts open or in some hybrid in-person instruction in January, that really shifted the numbers as well and reduced the percentage of fully remote students.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ajit. I wanted to do that. Student voice is so critically important. And could you summarize the thought exchange and what we learned from that?
Sure. So I'll do a brief point here. We ran a thought exchange in December, January. A thought exchange is like a crowdsourcing platform. About 8,000 of our students responded. The question we asked them was, as you're learning through the pandemic, what can Connecticut schools do to make students feel even more connected, energized, and enthusiastic about learning this year? There was really solutions. They want opportunities to connect socially, help them manage their mental health in terms of, if there's an exam, an AP exam coming up in May, don't remind them about it now. They know it's coming up. Don't keep reminding them because that stresses them out. So it's little things like that. Use fun activities, give spaces for us to connect informally, things like that. They also had suggestions from a teaching and learning perspective to focus on quality, not quantity, to prioritize the volume of schoolwork, especially for the remote or hybrid students. Be mindful of that, and provide direct instruction, not just assigned work. And that comes up quite a bit too. And lastly, communication and flexibility. They want educators to be more forgiving about deadlines. And looking at it from the educator perspective, I totally get it. They need to expect students to keep moving, but students want some level of flexibility. And lastly, they want consistency in the communication. Routines are so important, and this pandemic has really disrupted the routines we were used to, and that's students are yearning for some level of consistency.
So what do we do with the data? I don't know if Chris is on because it's important, right?
Yes.
We collect information from students. So how does that inform what we do? And that is the next slide. All right, Ajit, I don't know if that's you or Chris. Is Chris on?
I believe he Yes, he is on.
If I can certainly speak, Chris and I coordinated. Thank you. It's Irene. So yes, what are we going to do to act on this data? So we were already thinking about, as an agency, how might we help districts now and through the summer and beyond. So we were already, I think the thought exchange and the student voice validates what we were thinking going forward, how to diagnose and prioritize learning. Certainly leveraging those high quality instructional materials, putting high quality work in front of our learners. Relationships, certainly having time for social connection, ensuring that districts are building a multi-tiered system of support and programming, and the same, being transparent and consistent with communication with all learners, adults and students. So this is how we're acting on it, and I'm sure that we'll have additional updates through Commissioner Russell Tucker going forward.
Thank you, Irene. So we will from time to time bring the student voice back to you, because I think it's so critically important that we hear from them and that their voices inform our work. I wanted to quickly update you on our ESSA 2 as well. At last meeting, we shared with you where we were in developing the application. And I know Kathy's on because we're just about ready to pull the plug on that this week to get it out to our district. The next slide you can show, we're developing an internal process for how to work through and make sure that we are remaining true to the process. As you can see, we have our guiding principles, which are the 4 priorities that we're using, and we've developed an internal application review team, a cross-agency internal review team that's going to be reviewing those applications when they come in. We've established a relationship with CAP, the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents for Technical Assistance Team. So they are some ESSER advisors by way of some retired superintendents who will help lend capacity to some of our districts that may need an extra thought partner in district with them as they're working on their plans. So that's moving forward. And we're also developing an internal ESSER support team. So if you imagine the applications come in, cross-agency team reviewing them, as they review those priorities, they have the support teams to go to. The support teams are around the 4 priorities as well, so that they can look at applications and make sure that they are indeed doing what we were asked them to do, and to provide feedback to districts and to move that forward. The graphics are gears, and you can see that some gears are still emerging. So, for example, with Metric Direct and others who really can provide support to our districts, and those will be emerging, and then we'll be continuing to add those to our plans as we go forward. So I just wanted you to get an update. At the last meeting, Dr. Karen Walton, DeWar Walton, spoke about working with CAP as we're developing applications, and we've done that. And so we've already told districts already know what questions that they'll be asked to complete on the application, and then the application will go live in a few days. So that's where we are in ESSER 2. Just wanted you to be aware of that. And then finally, before we get to the next slide, you've heard a lot about vaccines. And I just want you to know where you are. John Fasanelli, I don't know if he slept since last week, because we have a great partnership with DTH and also the Office of the Governor when the governor stood up this new age band, and the fact that educators and child care providers can now receive vaccinations. We spend the weekend trying to learn from districts and help to support them. And John, if you can get online, he's become the person. Okay, thanks, John. Basically trying to make connections. If districts don't have a vaccine partner, John's working with DPH and the Office of the Governor to make connections with districts to get vaccine partners to stand up clinics. So, John, can you just say something briefly about that? That is the work that we've been engaged in for a week now.
Sure, thank you. Yes, when the governor announced it a week ago Monday, we started working with districts on Friday. We sent out a survey to districts to find out what their status was, if they had plans for vaccination clinics, if they were in progress, if they were completed, or if they did not have plans. And so we worked over the weekend with, we're working very closely with the Office of Early Childhood, the Department of Public Health, Office of the Governor, and certainly CAPS to triage some when districts did not have a partner. So for those who have responded that they did not have a vaccine partner, we work with EPH to connect them with one. There are a number of healthcare organizations, certainly Hartford Healthcare, Trinity Healthcare, Yale, in addition to all of the local health departments that we're matching them with districts who need some help. It's important to note that we're doing this in conjunction with all of our private schools, our approved private special education programs, and as you know, childcare was included in this part of Phase 1B. So we're sort of all together, making sure that all of those cohorts are covered with partners. We did issue another survey just yesterday to find out how things are progressing, and we've gotten already over 150 responses. And so far, that we know that there are over 200 clinics already set up for public school staff that may, in many cases, include childcare facilities and private schools as well. So over 200 set up now, and they're continuing to set those up over the course of the month. And so again, that's my update. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, John. So as you can see, we've been in the thick of everything that's happening, but it is so critically important to support our districts as well. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. And the final update, I'm sure you've gotten information from us on professional learning opportunities specifically for families that we've been offering, and that's a list of webinars that we scheduled. Last night, there was one in special education. We had over, I think John said 160 parents that were on that, talking directly to Brian Clifford, our special ed director, and others about special education. So we're providing support directly to our families as well, and that's available. And our final slide is our shout out to our colleagues who were asked by CCSSO to present on work that's happening in Connecticut. That's the final slide, if you can move for us. And I just really wanted to share, we're so proud of our staff and the work that's being done here, considered a leader in the country. And they talked about, with Lisa Lamento on the phone with folks from across the country, and basically really exemplary work that's happening here and sharing that information with others. So kudos to our staff that's doing what I call nation-leading work, and we're thrilled to be in that space and to share what we're learning here in Connecticut with them. Chair Taylor, that's the update for the department. Thank you, Commissioner. Very thorough and really so many different aspects that are now having to be addressed. What I wanted to ask you is about teachers being vaccinated. Will the Department of Health publish how many teachers will be vaccinated? Will we get that data from somewhere? You know? I look at Jess and I smile. We're in the midst of that conversation right now as to what information or data could be collected. What is it that EPH currently have for basically for everyone being vaccinated in Connecticut and what's available. There's some things, we're getting some legal questions, and I know Attorney Merlis, you just want to add that in the room so you know. With every success, there comes another stream of concerns, and those are beginning to come forward. Yeah, and part of what, I imagine will happen, we've heard that from nursing home attendants, that some people may not want to get vaccinated. So here you were saying you cannot open schools because, and then suddenly you hear about that they don't want to be vaccinated. So I just want to have a sense, but again, when you have presented, it's very thorough and very helpful for all to get a sense of where we are and what's going on, the multiple things you are doing. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I can just add that the reason we're having these conversations is I think that it's a very complex question. There are reasons other than perhaps vaccine hesitancy why folks might not get vaccinated related to potentially disability or some sort of health condition. And we're also trying to be cognizant of just sort of some of the practical questions around it. In some instances, folks are getting their vaccination through a school clinic. Perhaps in other cases, they got it because they were a certain age and they might have received it through a private, physician or a private clinic. And so what we're trying to do is first assess what data we have and sort of what is the reliability of the data, and then to the commissioner's point, also then try to consider what the potential, where it is a potential to appropriately provide information, and where it may create some issues about privacy, and also data sharing or data privacy, because as we know, oftentimes once the information is kind of accumulated in a certain way, there are certain presumptions you can make, and you want to make sure, especially if we're not sure what the data actually represents, that we're considering the complexity around that. So it's a question we're working on.
Thank you. No, and I imagine you will be working on for a long time. Thank you.
If I could, I'm glad that it's being looked at that part, because I think it is going to be very, I hate to use the word misleading, but there are, I know a lot of educators who had received the vaccine way before the governor changed it. What concerns me more is that we have to hang on to that mindset. This doesn't change on how our schools, I cringe when I hear, I can't wait, until everyone has this vaccine and then they don't have to wear their mask, they don't have to, like I'm always like, plan on that for the rest of the school year. Like, I know, the setup of your classrooms and so forth, that is not going to change. And I think we have to make sure that mindset is constantly put out there, especially for our parents. I think, all the teachers will have their vaccines so we can open the school. It really was done, if I'm not mistaken, so teachers no longer have to quarantine. I mean, the CDC has said since day one, it was not something that increased, we didn't see, there's no showing that it was necessary. Is it necessary to make sure we can staff schools? Yes, because we went into terrible staffing issues because of quarantine, really. One person is affected and all of a sudden, it knocks out in some cases the school. But I think we have to be very careful of when all the teachers are done, and hopefully by March, at least one dose will be given, that we don't have this mindset that they're good to go now. We're back to normal. That will not be the case. And what you're referring to as far as, putting out that data, Hartford School System, only 42% of the teachers, receive. Well, that could be very misleading, and they're just using the clinics, because there are many who have already got the vaccine way before this occurred.
So I appreciate, Erin, that thought. As you know, we have our Tuesday morning calls with CPH and others. This past Tuesday, we had close to 700 folks on that call, and that question was asked, I think, by someone about what to be able to do, even around distancing. And GTH, our epidemiologist, reiterated the fact that all the mitigation strategies must still be in place. So, the issue of becoming lax should not be, and we will continue to reinforce that message. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? Committee reports. Academic standards.
Yeah, hi. Academic standards assessments, we met February 9th. I actually had to leave early because that was my reappointment hearing. And it was a whole nother story. And Ajit sent out the minutes, and Estella approved them. Our next meeting will be April 13th, next month.
Thank you. Accountability.
We met on February 18th. We had 2 items, the integrated charter school, which is doing very well. And we're very pleased with what they share with us. And we also had the Office of Child Advocate really seeking to ensure that we are supporting the same goals that they advocate for, and supporting ensure that students with disabilities are being provided the education opportunities that we're meeting and gaining April.
Thank you very much. Finance has not met. Legislation.
We met this morning. We had a great presentation by Andrea Burnell about the preschool oversight role as far as the Board of Education goes. This came up with a discussion. As you know, this committee has been looking at bylaws for the last, well, almost a year now. And this came up as a question because preschool was in those bylaws, trying to get more specifics, which JUSTA provided us with. But it was a great presentation on how all these overlapping of agencies as far as preschool goes. We will have probably another one either come to the committee or to the full board, but we will review that further because it was so good. Do you want me to also report on NASB and CERC? NASB, Charlene, what you were speaking to with my whole child study group, we met at the beginning of the end of last month, I'm sorry. Connecticut was recognized right from the start for our adoption of our culturally responsive education statement. It was funny to hear that, what is Connecticut going to be recognized for next month is what they said, because this is, we only meet 5 times for the whole study, and I think we're on meeting number 3, and all 3 have started out with Connecticut certainly is doing it right. So it was nice to hear that as far as that goes. We had a very interesting presentation, and it reminded me of some of the things that Ajit was reporting out on. And it was really about the assessment and grading. And of course, this is countrywide, where some parts of the country are already in the midst of their assessments because they get out much earlier than we do. But this particular presentation, they went over 4 areas that are going to be major concerns for Board of Ed. The first one was shortages and layoffs. I know we haven't really seen, I don't think the layoff situation, but you wonder when, with the new staff that has been hired and they go back, what will happen if there will be a situation of excess staff. The toll on the workforce, the amount of teachers that they are seeing that either retired because of the pandemic or are going to retire, that we're not planning to do so. They feel that is going to be a huge problem with added problem to the teaching force. Teaching prep was a big part, is that not only do higher ed have to look at differently on how teachers are prepped, especially our very new teachers. Any teacher that started this year certainly has not been prepped in a way that most teachers have. They talked about many of the boards that did waivers, like we did somewhat for student teaching, using our Paris for bilingual education, and all the different things that we have to look at for that kind of PD for these folks is a lot different than we've looked at for our regular graduating 4-year teachers. And that because of all this, that they feel that the diversity in the teaching force can be greatly affected because of the rate of the many people that were planning to go to college and did not, because they could no longer afford to do so for a lot of the cases. And so it was a very interesting study, and they're going to come back to us, and they were going to actually send us the printed study. Once I get that, I will, I'll make sure that all of us get it so the whole board can see it. But it was a very interesting, presentation for the whole child study group. I think I have 2 sessions left, and then that comes to a close. CERC has met a few times actually with the retirement of George. Marjorie Davis has been appointed as the Associate Director of CERC. That happened about 2 weeks ago. Again, their PD calendar very, Shirley put up our PD calendar. They are just as busy. Racial equity, as I reported out a couple of months ago, is still the leading request for the agency, as well as they will now start working a great deal on IEP training rollout. I guess that there's a whole new IEP training for the whole state of Connecticut. They have 20 districts that will be piloting that for next year, and then the full rollout to all districts will take place. And then they keep talking of the opening of the new building, which they're hoping will happen very soon. I guess, Charlene, you probably know better than I guess it's been on ongoing for quite some time. So that was it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh, and one other thing with NASB, I know, Woody, I didn't know if you were, all this, just so you know, the NASB political conference is March 22nd and 23rd. Woody and I would like to attend that. It's a virtual conference. We would like to attend it. We are holding off registering because we're waiting to see the date of the retreat.
I think you should put, you cannot do 22nd or 23rd. I cannot do the 22nd either, so the three of us I cannot do it, so you.
Oh, okay. I just said, we didn't want to put that burden on the board. That's why I agree with Don, the sooner we can get that out.
Yeah.
Because we would like to register, to attend.
Right.
Yes.
And
And so we don't want
put
to.
no, and I will put no on the 22nd. It's three of us.
Okay, I will send out the email today, and basically, I will still put the 22nd, but right now, based on the dates that I am aware of for the week of the 22nd, the best looking date is, right now, seems to be Friday, the 26th.
Okay.
Because there are many options. There are 2 days that he gave us that was totally open, the 22nd and the 26th. Very open. There's there's about 4 choices, time slots to choose from. And right now, as you're speaking, the 26th is looking like it's the best date. So I will word that the email accordingly.
Okay. And then I'll send you the information that NASB,
That's because given the fact that there's a new government, a president and so forth, should be very helpful to understand the dynamics that are going on.
Yeah, and then in this case, I know Woody had probably gotten information on it too. They did talk about it in our study group that they will be breaking it down by state as much as they can, which should be very interesting to actually hear from our legislation. In Connecticut.
Also, if the conferences, if they include a cost, I need to do the registration.
Yes, I'll send that to you.
Thank you.
Don't worry, there's charges.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have anything left on this agenda, sir?
Oh, my goodness.
Well, usually also, you might want to check with Woody, because he's been reporting on NASB also. So I don't know if he has-
Woody, did you have anything to add on NASB?
Right.
Can't hear you, Woody.
All right, no, I do not have anything to add, but thanks for asking.
Thank you, guys.
Yes.
Well, the couple of things. One, you talked about some of these topics earlier. We're working on getting everyone back in school full time. Right now, we're still doing hybrid with the kids, and hopefully we'll be able to accomplish that in April. So a lot of it's with the local health departments, and we're also working. Jeff's also working with the local health departments on the vaccination problem, and making sure we get all the teachers vaccinated. So we've got like 17 health departments to contend with in that process. But I'm sure that you'll be able to do that. The admission process, we migrated to an online process last year, and that's helping out this year because with you're not able to go out and talk to students in their class, in their schools, and things of that nature. What they're seeing so far is that the applications are as robust as we normally see. So we are hopeful that we'll be able to have an appropriate size class coming in, similar to the ones we've had in the past. We still have some staffing problems. The teacher recruitment is going well. You may know that everything is done through BAS now. It's not the Department of Education HR department. And we've had some problems with support staff. Commissioner Russell Tucker's been helpful in intervening with that. We may not need to talk to you. We got a few more hiccups. To get some, because you can't really keep the schools open if you don't have people to maintain the buildings. And you need nurses for the schools, and we've had difficulty getting them through the system to get them hired. The delay in separation is like, that's one of those things like there's a thing of water there and it keeps moving. This was, when I first read the legislation, I thought it was a 2-year bump, but it's actually it's one more than we had expected before. So we're still working and with our colleagues at the State Department of Education on the things that are necessary for that separation, and we will be ready for that when it does happen. Hopefully, it will happen with what is now on the table, and that's basically it.
I just have a question for you. Do the kids have to make up like the time, their hands-on time, like that of this year? Are they required to make that up? Is their next year going to look different because of this year?
It may look different. Right now, the students that are in school are all on the hands-on side.
Okay.
So they're doing all the academics remotely, and the time that they're in school, they're doing the shops.
Oh, okay.
And then when you have a shutdown, like there's a quarantine or something in that particular school, then on the shop side, half the time is theory and half the time is hands-on. So they're doing as much theory as they can while if they're having to shut down the school. But they're still falling behind.
Yeah, I would imagine, yeah.
So they're looking at whether we do some evening things or summer school. We want the kids to get as many credentials as they can when they graduate. I think the big concern is the graduating seniors.
Yeah.
Is how to get them as far enough along so they're prepared when they finish. And then last year, you get a lot of kids that pick up a lot more credentials. Also harder to get work-based learning done in this environment. So it's been a real challenge. I think, next year we got another year in there. I think we can balance things out with the kids who are not seniors. But the seniors are the ones that most worried about.
The kids must really miss that.
Yeah.
I mean, it must, a lot of them, that's why they want to be there, and that's hard. I'm sure it's very difficult for them.
It is. And it's difficult for the instructors too, especially when you've got a shutdown and then you've done about as much theory as you can without getting the process of using the theory. Like you learn it, but you don't get to practice it.
Yeah.
And it kind of doesn't stick as much. But if you learn it and then practice it, then it's gonna stick with you a lot longer. But they're doing the best they can in the situation. And the main goal is to keep everybody safe.
Yeah.
So even though it causes hiccups, we want everybody to be safe. Yep. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you. Other questions?
I think that's it.
Nasby?
No, that's it.
We did Nasby already. I think that is it then.
Yeah, I just want to say how nice it is to be in person and how good it feels and how good it feels to see everyone. I miss shaking hands and hugging and all that. I also want to say how delighted I am that we can be in person to both to recommend each other. So,
yeah.
Thank you to everybody and the staff. Always thank the staff on our behalf because we know that they're doing incredible work, very difficult stuff. So thank you for everyone. Thank you. I certainly will do that.
People in the department, people in our schools are working in circumstances none of us could have imagined. Doing amazing things. Okay. I think we are adjourned then.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And I need lunch.